I need that money. I really, really do. I need that money. I really need that money. Really need that money. I need that money. I really, really do. I need that money. I really need that money. Really need that money. Really, that money. That money.
The state of Capcom's classic fighting games. I don't want to talk about Street Fighter 6 because that's the game that Capcom puts all the effort and emphasis on, right? Street Fighter 6 is the game that gets all the hype, gets all the tournament coverage, gets all the updates, constant updates, quality of life updates, gameplay updates, right? Skins, all this extra content, DLC characters, seasonal updates, everything. It's the big game. It's the one that Capcom wants you playing. It's the one that they want you talking about. It's the one that they think is going to make them the most money. Okay. But the problem with that is that if all you do is focus on the one big modern fighting game, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket. And for those who don't know, because you very well may not know this, Capcom actually used to be really good at diversification and giving you options, even in the same genre of games. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Back in the day, for survival horror, sure, you had Resident Evil, but then they came out with games like Dino Crisis and other alternatives that were just a little different, similar, but had different spins on them so that you could get a different kind of survival horror game. Devil May Cry. Just between the versions of Devil May Cry changed quite a bit. And then Capcom tried other things. How about Mega Man, where it started as a 2D platformer, then it went to 3D, then they started a whole spin-off series and things. So you could keep playing more classic Mega Man with the Zero series, or you could play the Battle Network series, which was completely different. This is what Capcom was good at. That way, if you didn't currently like the current iteration of what was out, there was other options, other alternatives. Now, they weren't always as popular as the main option that Capcom focused on, but they were still there. The problem right now with Capcom, in my opinion, when it comes to their fighting games division, is that they literally put all of their eggs in one basket and say, eat the eggs. Well, what if you don't like eggs? Too bad. Eat the eggs. Well, wait, I don't like eggs. I want something else. And then you look at the competition, right? And you look at games like Tekken or Mortal Kombat, or let's be honest, all these new fighting games that are now coming out, they're starting to seem a little samey. Marvel Tokon, the new Invincible fighting game, 2XKO, excuse me. But they all seem like they're very samey. More simple games, high combos, flashy team attacks, but they're all very similar games, right? So the problem here is there's no variety, right? You're either in a certain established game line and genre, or you can't do anything. With Capcom, it didn't used to be like that. Okay, when I was growing up and Capcom fighting games were becoming prominent, sure, you started with Street Fighter 2, but then that branched out and became Street Fighter Alpha, which had interesting new things like chain combos, custom combos, and an interesting anime-like art style. But then it branched out even further into the Versus series of games, which were team-based, super jumping, high-octane, big flashy, comic book-like experiences. But then you had Street Fighter 3, which had state-of-the-art, cutting-edge, high frame-rate graphics, super detailed character designs, and a unique parry system that changed the way that fighting games were played forever. So at that time frame, there was a ton of different ways to play Capcom fighting games. And essentially what ended up happening was at the end of the 90s and early 2000s, a big four emerged. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for the Versus series, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the classics, Capcom vs. SNK 2 for the modern hybrids, because it had a little of everything, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike for the kind of evolution where the future was going style of gameplay. So 4 games. Those 4 games were all different. They had similarities between them, but man, you could be a pro at Marvel 2 and suck at all the others. You know what I mean? Like, they were that different. And the thing was, you could eat a delicious buffet of fighting games, all from the same company. So they all had similarities when it came to footsies and spacing and, special move motions and things like that. But then you could be a specialist in one of those games. Those were the golden days of fighting games. All right? That was the golden era. It's just funny because so many people who play fighting games today are young, never played the classics, weren't there for the golden era, and they think the golden era of fighting games was Street Fighter 4. No. Street Fighter 4 was the renaissance, the resurgence of competitive fighting games, which brought them back to the forefront. But the true golden age was the late 90s and the first few years of the 2000s, when you had such variety in the games that you played. Now, we can sit here and argue all day about, is the modern fighting game better than the classic? That's really not what I'm here to argue. Everyone has a different opinion on that. I personally think the classics are much better, but that's probably because I grew up during that time period. Maybe if I was a Street Fighter 4-er of this last fighting game generation, maybe I would think that Street Fighter 4, 5, and 6 are the modern classic trilogy and everything before that was crap. I don't know. Who knows, right? You never know. You can only see from your own perspective. But anyway, the reason that I'm talking about this is because Capcom is solely focusing on Street Fighter 6 right now, right? They are really not doing anything in regards to the rest of the games. And the funny part about that is there is demand. Absolutely, there is demand within the fighting game community for something else. Whether it's another new game that plays different from Street Fighter 6, so that way there's more modern variety, or a restoration of the classics. If you don't believe me, then why do you think that every time that they release one of these collections, whether it's Capcom Fighting Collection 1 or 2, or the Marvel Versus Collection, or whatever they may be, that there's a big hype among the fighting game community and just the online gaming community in general? Even mainstream gaming websites get excited and cover these releases. But did you notice something? Did you notice that every time that these releases get hyped, and even Capcom will get worked up for like a month about their latest retro collection release, did you notice that after about that one initial month, it just seems like no one acts like they ever existed? Have you heard anyone recently talking about Capcom Fighting Collection 2 outside of the fact that they just did a free update that added 4 characters for free to Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper? But outside of that, do you hear anyone talking about, hey, there's a tournament circuit for this. Hey, there's a resurgence of the games in it. Hey, no. And you might say, why? Well, it's pretty simple. Capcom half-asses these collections. They don't put the resources, the time, the effort into these collections like they would a modern game. They put in half the features of what you would actually need for one of these games to actually have some kind of longevity. Instead, they base it solely on retro nostalgia and hype. They sell you this collection claiming that it's going to be amazing. And then when you actually get it, you realize, why is this missing? Why doesn't this work? Why is this so bad? And then within a few months of that collection being sold as a new release, everyone drops it. And you want to know what the fighting game community does? They stop playing the hot new collection for $30, $40, and they go back to Fightcade. And this is a major problem. Fightcade is a emulation suite which allows you to play retro fighting games for free on your computer, PC. It's PC only, it's not on console. And it allows you to use Rollback netcode to play it online for free. And this is how the entire FGC is playing retro games. It's free. Is it legal? Well, technically, Fightcade itself is legal. The netcode is legal. But your downloading of the ROM of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or Capcom vs. SNK 2 or Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and loading it into Fightcade is illegal. But emulation in general is illegal and always has been unless you own the rights to the actual ROM that you're using. So, for example, if you have an actual arcade board of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike lying around somewhere that you can legally prove is your property, then technically it's a legal gray area whether or not you actually have the rights to emulate the game and play it. But everyone else who doesn't have it, you're breaking the law. Now, they're not going to go after anyone for it. If anything, what happens is these companies will go to the websites that host the ROMs and say, shut down the website. And that's actually something that Nintendo did in the last decade. They cracked down on the internet and shut down all of these very popular websites where you could get their game ROMs for like their NES and SNES libraries. So then they could sell their games via, say, oh, your online subscription to Nintendo Switch Online or whatever. Now you'll have access to those games. So Nintendo cracked down. Most other companies don't. Capcom hasn't. Capcom hasn't done a thing. They know that there's websites where you can get all their classics. They don't stop people from doing it. Now, they don't promote it. You'll never hear an official Capcom representative say, hey, I'll go play on Fightcade. They're never going to say that because every once in a while, they want to sell one of these retro collections and make some money. But the problem is these retro collections are really flash in the pan money grabs rather than an attempt to have posterity for the classic Capcom fighting games. For example, with this latest Capcom Fighting Collection 2, all right, people have been asking for an official way to play Capcom vs. SNK 2 online ever since it was released on the original Xbox console in the first half of the 2000s. Because if you can believe it, that was actually the only way you could purchase the game legally and play it online. Since then, the only way to play CVS2 has been illegal emulation. And since they're not selling the game actively, everyone's been okay with that. Just do it that way, right? But now, in the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, you can actually play the game online with legal right. Okay? So, you might say, well, that's great. There must have been a giant resurgence in the community. People are playing CVS2 in droves, right? It's the first time in 20 years. Everyone must be excited. It lasted about 2 weeks. And then immediately what ended up happening was the massive shortcomings of the collection started to show the cracks in Capcom's efforts to make posterity for their old games. And the community at this point, already most of them have quit the game. And those who have stuck with it have all migrated to one version of the game. Okay? So what am I talking about? Allow me to explain. And by the way, thank you all for these contributions. I will shout them out when I'm done with this topic. I want to get through this topic and not get derailed before we do shout-outs, but I promise you all, you'll get shout-outs. They're all coming, okay? So, Capcom Fighting Collection 2 is currently available on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch 2, and PC. It is not cross-platform. So, do I even need to, I could just stop now. I could literally just say, that's it. To make a fighting game in 2025, sell it on 4 different platforms, but not make it cross-platform is just death to the game. Because you need to have people playing across all platforms to have a healthy player base. Every game does it now. It's not just, it's fighting games. No, every game does this now. Every FPS game, every team-based shooter game, everything is cross-platform. So to say that we're going to sell a copy or a posterity version, a collection of our old games, but not make them cross-platform for multiplayer, immediately shows that Capcom isn't really caring about the posterity of their classics. What they're caring about is this, a cheap, quick money grab, instead of actually making this a way to say, hey, now you can play the classic games so they're not forgotten. Or even saying, hey, thanks for being a fan for so long. You waited 20 years. Now you can finally play these games online without having to illegally emulate them on a PC. Here you go. They don't care. If Capcom cared, they would put the effort in to have crossplay. Now, admittedly, to have crossplay in these games would take time and effort and money. You know, something that Capcom probably doesn't want to invest. Instead, they just want to slap together a crappy, barely functional collection and throw it your way and sell it to you for $40 and act like it's a new game. So in regards to Capcom Fighting Collection 2, here's what's happened. First week, you buy it on a platform, you play it. Oh, look at all these players. Second week, you buy it, you go to play. Oh, I'm having kind of a hard time finding matches. Third week, where the hell is everyone? And fourth week, it's dead, can't play it anymore. And this happens with every single collection that Capcom puts out, not just one or two. The Marvel collection, it happened too. I was playing Marvel vs. Capcom 1, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, having a ton of fun with the collection. About a month and a half in, all those games are completely dead. The only game you can find comp for is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. What gives? Well, it's not cross-play. So because of that, it's dead. You know, it would be one thing if fighting games were as big as Call of Duty, or if fighting games were as big as League of Legends or Counter-Strike. It's not. They like to pretend it is, but it's not. In terms of competitive scenes, fighting games are one of the smaller ones. You may not realize that because of the way that they tried to hype it, but it actually is much smaller than the player base for many other popular esports leagues. So you can't sell a game like that and not have it cross-platform and expect that it's going to have a healthy player base. 2 months. That's about the time frame until death, okay? So that's just problem number 1. Problem number 2, and this one I'm sure people will disagree with me on, but I'm just going to be honest about it, rollback netcode. Now, I'm not saying that rollback netcode is horrible, unplayable garbage, and in fact, I would argue that modern fighting games work well with rollback netcode because they're designed for it, okay? But the problem is, you're talking about classics. Games that were designed to play only in person on a cabinet or a console, but mostly an arcade cabinet. They never had lag or latency in mind when designed. So when you make a game that was made for only in person, no lag, no input drop gameplay, and then you put it into rollback netcode, you are making a recipe for disaster. I'll give you 2 examples. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Rushdown is one of the biggest ways to play the game. MSP, which is Magneto, Storm, Psylocke, one of the best rushdown teams in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 history, is a team based on insanely fast mix-ups and movements that make you block wrong, getting one hit, and then turning that into a ginormous combo that can literally lead to the end of the game. The problem with taking Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and putting it into online rollback netcode is that the fastest teams literally cannot be defended against. They actually tested it and proved it. If you're fighting against these faster teams, you cannot actually block any of their mix-up attempts. You'll block correctly, but the netcode can't keep up and rolls the dice, because that's rollback netcode. Oh, it's trying to catch up what actually happened, and it favors the person attacking and never the person defending. What ends up happening is, on the screen, you'll see literal Magneto teleporting. It won't show the animations of his attacks. It'll just show him teleporting, and next thing you know, your energy bar goes all the way down and game over. Well, how is that viable online? The answer is it's not. Okay? Here's another example. Capcom versus SNK 2, certain grooves, which is the different classes that you can pick of how you play the game, have a roll. Okay? In the real version of Capcom versus SNK 2, meaning the offline version with no lag, when someone rolls, there is a recovery. And the recovery means that they cannot do anything after the roll. And you have two options. You can throw during the roll animation if you're close enough, or you can throw out a move so at the end of their rolling animation, they get caught by a hit. It's like a freebie combo for you. The roll is only effective if you're going through a move your opponent is doing. So, for example, if you're both standing next to each other and Ryu throws a fireball, Hadouken, you roll through it and then you can hit him. That's the intention of the roll and what it was used for in the game. The roll is not supposed to be an offensive strategy where you could just do it over and over and get away with it. But online, that's exactly what people are doing. No exaggeration. They're just rolling constantly and then do a special move after it, mash a button after it, mash a throw after it. And because of the nature of rollback netcode, again, it favors the offensive move, the repetitive move, the person who's pressing buttons more versus the person who is actually timing the reaction. So if you see someone roll and you try to time something to punish that roll when they're in their recovery, if that person's just going like this mashing, the rollback netcode favors the masher and will give them their attack way more often than your timed counter. Does that sound right? No. Now you might say, Phil's making that up. The number one ranked person in Capcom versus SNK 2 on PlayStation is a guy who literally has a bad connection and just rolls constantly and mashes buttons. I know because I played him on Friday night and I beat him 3-1. He actually has way more points than anyone else. It says he is the ultimate grandmaster, number one rank of the game, and he sucks at the game. He's legitimately bad. And I actually talked to my former teammates from back in the day, and they all said, yeah, everyone's beating this guy. This guy literally just rolls and mashes buttons and gets away with it because his connection is so bad, and there's no way to really beat it besides to outplay him so he doesn't get to the situation where he can just keep doing it abusively. So everyone's beating this guy and knows he sucks, but he's ranked number one because he just abuses this online tactic. That problem ruins the experience of playing a classic fighting game. I've also played versions of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and also I've played versions of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo in these collections that have similar problems. Super Turbo particularly. In Super Turbo Online, okay, when you're playing with rollback netcode, some of the worst characters become the best. Blanca. Literally, Blanca can just jump and press light attacks, land and mash a button and get a throw. Even though you're timing the interrupt to stop it, the game favors the button masher. So they get to throw 9 times out of 10, even though you timed your reversal perfectly, it doesn't come out. How are you supposed to play the game competitively? You can't. Okay? So that's problem number 2. But the third problem, and this is the one that's the biggest problem right now, is that the ranking systems are a joke. They mean absolutely nothing. Why? Because you can't lose points in these collections. Wait, what? When you're playing online play with ranked matches, if you win your match, you should gain points, and if you lose a match, you should lose points, right? No. With these collections, you only always gain points. You gain either 1 point if you lose, or you gain anywhere from like 30, 50 to upwards of 150 points if you win. But you're always gaining points. Hence, the game just rewards people who put more time into playing online rather than people who actually are good. If you lost points, that person who is ranked Ultimate Grandmaster in CVS2 would actually be way low ranked because everyone has beaten this guy and agrees he sucks, but because he simply plays more than everyone else, he's the Ultimate Grandmaster of CVS2 online. He's the best player. In what fucking universe? in this broken ass universe where Capcom half-assed their efforts to create posterity for their classic games. Anyone with 2 fucking brain cells would say, hey, guess what? If you win, you gain points. If you lose points. That would weed out the scrubs. But these collections don't. They reward time investment rather than skill. Now, I'm not saying that time investment shouldn't be a part of being good at a fighting game. I'm saying that just solely playing more than everyone else shouldn't ensure that you're the best ranked person. That doesn't even make fucking sense. That would be like saying someone who's a professional sports player is not as good as someone who just plays the sport more than them, right? LeBron James isn't as good at basketball as someone who plays basketball more than LeBron James does. What? That's how they judge it. It makes no sense. So these 3 key problems, okay? No crossplay, rollback and netcode not actually being compatible with the classics the way that they were designed, and not losing points when you lose basically means these collections are crap. And so here we are, about 2.5 months into Capcom Fighting Collection 2? The collection is completely dead on every single platform except PlayStation. I can't play it on PC. I try. I can't find any opponents. They don't exist. Everyone stopped playing it over there. The only way I can find players is PlayStation 5. And the sad fact is, when I play, it's almost always against someone who's higher ranked than me, and they suck. They have a bad internet connection, likely on purpose. They roll and mash buttons to get wins in CVS2. They don't even understand the fundamentals of the game. They don't know combos. They have no strategy. They literally roll mash in lag, and this is the game. And that's not the game. If you try to roll mash in a tournament, you will have your ass handed to you in a paper bag, and you'll be laughed out of the building as you go 0-2. But you do it online, you apparently win a ton, and you get rewarded and get called a master or a grand master. That is a joke. And that is why these fighting games don't have posterity right now. Even though Capcom attempts to sell them to you in these collections, they'll never last more than just a couple of months. Seriously. And that's disheartening for someone like me who, to be honest, doesn't really like the modern fighting games that much. I'll play them, I'll learn them at a base level, but I don't want to invest a ton of time in any of them because at the end of the day, I do feel like they're too simplistic. They're based more on pattern play and guessing rather than actual skill and reaction. I grew up in an era where you need to have massive high-level skill, both in hand-eye coordination, reactions, but also gameplay. It's not just, I'm doing my pattern now, I execute my pattern well. It's thinking on the fly, adjusting every single moment you're playing because you might run into a new strategy or a new thing you've never seen, and you have to try to learn a way around it. Not just, oh, well, with Bison, you just do these 3 things over and over till you get to the corner, and then you guess and then you win. No, that's not even, in my mind, that's not even a fighting game. That's modern Street Fighter 6. It drives me nuts because classic fighting games are very different. And that's why I'm not in love with modern fighters. Not that I absolutely detest them. I played Street Fighter 6 for nearly 2 years straight. I got great at it. I had 5, 6, 7 characters at master rank, and I was busy. I mean, you saw even with Mai Shiranui that I could do it whenever I want. Any of these new characters comes out, I could get readjusted to the game. I'll go right to master with a new character. It's not a big deal. But the thing is, it's just not that fun to play. I prefer the classics. So why is it I can't play the classics? Why is it that if I want to play a classic fighting game with a good connection, with anything that people will play, I have to play it on Fightcade, which literally I have to steal the ROM illegally from the internet to play it? Does that make any sense? If Capcom is serious about posterity of the classics, they need to actually put effort in. They need to make a collection that has crossplay, that has some kind of tweak to the netcode, because just tossing the bare bones rollback netcode into these games is not working. And they need to have a real ranking system where you gain points when you win, you lose points when you lose. It actually tries to match make you appropriately against people of your same skill level. None of these things are present in the current collections, so they die out right away. And people are right back to Fightcade to illegally play these games, and then these collections die. What's really sad is, as you guys know, my favorite fighting game of all time is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Okay? That's the one that back in the day I got really good at. I was winning tournaments. Highest place at EVO, nationals, won multiple EVO qualifiers like EVO East and others. And I love that game. Right now, there is no way for me to play that game legally that's worth my time. There's 2 different collections that have it. They're both insanely laggy to the point where there's no point in even booting the game. It's not like you're actually even playing Super Turbo when you play those collections. The connections are god awful. insanely bad to the point where, again, you could jump around with Blanca, mashing light attacks and mashing throw, and you can't stop it. It's unbeatable. And that's not the game. At a competitive level, Blanca is the worst character in the game. With these collections, he's actually one of the best. And there's nothing you can do about it but accept it because they put no effort in. So what's sad is I want to play Super Turbo, right? If anything, this last year, you had the collection that had Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's one of the big 4 I used to play. You have the collection now that has CVS 2. And I've actually gotten good at CVS 2. Like me now, these teams I'm playing, I'm actually doing really well. I'm playing at a tournament level from back in the day. If I had the skill I have now back in the day in CVS 2, likely I would have been placing top 8. I'm not kidding. But there's no way for me to play Super Turbo. Will they ever come out with a collection that has a good version of Super Turbo that I can play? Like they tried a few years ago. If you remember, was it 3-4 years ago they had that collection? It was terrible. The netcode was awful, no crossplay, and the game ran at the wrong speed. But what happened was because they were using crappy emulation in this collection, certain stages ran way too fast. Like Zangief stage was literally like a third faster than all the other stages. So whenever you played on Zangief stage, certain characters couldn't even be beaten. Like Vega just wall died. I can't even stop him because it's so running too fast. You can't even stop or block or nothing. It's brainless, stupid shit. Anyone with any kind of know-how would tell you this isn't fly, but Capcom didn't care. They sold it anyway. Did they consult anyone who was good at the game? No. Did they care? No. All they care about is this. Minimum effort, maximum profits, short term. We know this collection will die in 2 months anyway. Make our money quick and go run and put it towards something else. Pathetic. So now I have to wonder, will I ever actually get to play Super Turbo again? I might not. And before you say, well, Phil, why don't you play Fightcade? There's one glaring problem with Fightcade. It's not safe. Fightcade is not safe at all because Fightcade is this third-party, unlicensed thing. It's unprotected. If you play someone in Fightcade, you can see their IP. Not directly through Fightcade, but easily using, programs. You can easily see the IP address of anyone you play on Fightcade. So the moment if I went to play on Fightcade, someone would get my IP address. Next thing I know, I'd be DDoS attacked and I can't work, right? And you might say, well, that's not a problem for most people in the FGC. You're right. However, it's still a problem. It should be fixed. And you shouldn't be relying on a third party to develop technically an illegal way to play the classics, Capcom owns the rights, has the ability, has the manpower. They could do it if they actually gave a damn. But Capcom has become greedy. They care more about microtransactions. They care more about seasonal updates. They care more about stream monster views rather than actually putting out good games and good versions of the classics. So now you could spend $40 every year to buy another collection. That's another version of a game that's already been out, and it'll play like shit, and you'll lag, and it will have no good ranking system and no crossplay, and Capcom doesn't seem to care. The problem is the FGC could fix it, but they don't. Instead, they just accept it. They drop more money, and then they move on. And then they're back to the next stream where they're hyping up Street Fighter 6 and all this shit. I want to know why, in a community that has grown so much in the last 10 to 15 years, become more mainstream, has big money behind it, why have they not actually solved this problem? Why is no one in the FGC talking about it? It's common knowledge. If you actually talk amongst players who play these games, they will all say to you, oh yes, this is truthful. This is actually happening. But then why is it not actually a big topic of discussion? Why is there not an actual demand to Capcom to fix it? And why do people keep spending money on these bad collections? I don't understand it. It just sucks. Like for me, I want to play the classics and I still don't have a good way to do it. And it's unfortunate. The thing is, I'm no longer part of the FGC. So I have no power, no clout. Me saying this on my podcast, maybe on some insanely rare chance, someone in the FGC will hear me say this and then they'll talk about it. But I doubt it. I do think that this is something that needs to be addressed. These games will be lost to time if we don't have actual good modern versions to play. And we don't have them. We're not allowed to have them because Capcom just wants to keep selling Street Fighter 6 a millionth time. I'm okay with them selling Street Fighter 6 the millionth time, but I also want to be able to play the games I grew up with. And that's my problem. We're losing our grip of the classics because they just want to keep making more money on Street Fighter 6. Well, I'm tired of it. We can have both worlds. You can have your Street Fighter 6, but I should also be able to have my Super Turbo. Why can't I? Back in the day, there was a big four different styles of fighting game that you could jump between and enjoy. Today, there's one, Street Fighter 6. If you don't like it, you have to leave Capcom and go play Tekken or Mortal Kombat or Guilty Gear or any of these other zillion games that are out or coming out. But you can't just have variety in Capcom anymore. That's a problem. I don't know why the FGC is so accepting of it, to be honest. I don't get it. Put your money where your mouth is, right? And, you know, if you really want to see Capcom do something, people have to actually be verbose about it and talk about it and bring it up. Remember the hashtag release or it was free MVC2, right? Hashtag free MVC2. Well, eventually we got a Marvel collection. Sadly, it's already dead. It hasn't even been a year. Are you aware of that? Hasn't even been a year since that Marvel collection came out. It's dead. If you go to play it, you can only find people in Marvel 2, nobody else. That's it. Why? Because it's shit. No crossplay, terrible online play, bad ranking system. But why is no one talking about that? Free MVC2 was such a big thing. That's the FGC, man. I don't know. You tell me. Maybe it's because there's no money in it. Maybe because talking about Street Fighter 6 constantly every day will get you some attention and views and money. And talking about the classics doesn't do shit, right? Like literally right now, I probably could have talked about any other topic for the last half hour and I would have made money. But instead I talked about old school Street Fighter because I wanted to on my own show. And what are you going to do? I guess the only way. Sometimes you got to talk about stuff and stick up for what you feel is right or something that's a valid topic rather than worrying about printing money every moment. Well, that segment's done, so now it's time to print some money. So ladies and gentlemen, please support the stream right now. Let's get some support rolling in. In fact, let's do some shout outs.